Hello, and welcome to the Harvard Alumni for Global Women's Empowerment Expo. This is our second virtual expo and our fifth overall. Thank you so much for joining us from all over the world, especially if you're joining us for the first time, and even more so if you're coming back again. We are so excited to have you. My name is Sajida Shah, and I'm honored to be president of GlobalWE. Harvard GlobalWE is a shared interest group, or SIG, of the Harvard Alumni Association. We are dedicated to the empowerment of women through education, dialogue, and connection among individuals working for women's rights and freedoms worldwide. We highlight and raise awareness about issues concerning women's empowerment worldwide, including, but not limited to, education, political rights, freedom from violence, women's health, and economic empowerment. Today we are thrilled to have our keynote speaker, Dr. Bridget, I hope I say this correctly, Malawezi, representatives from 11 amazing organizations, and all of you here today to learn more about the wonderful and impactful work Dr. Malawezi and these organizations are doing to advance women and girls' empowerment around the world and promote healthy communities. Before I turn it over to GlobalWE Connect Vice Chair, Anna, who will provide an overview of today's events and introduce our keynote speaker, let me thank all of you for joining us and express our deep gratitude to the speakers, GlobalWE Connect team, the board, and the volunteers who have worked so hard to make this expo possible. We are really thrilled to have everyone here. Over to you, Anna.
Thank you, Sajida. Hello, everyone, and welcome to the 2022 Expo. Welcome back to those of you who joined us from last week. My name is Anna Butuzova, and I'm the Vice Chair of the GlobalWE Connect initiative. The goal of this initiative is to connect members of the Harvard University community and friends with organizations leading the way globally for women's empowerment in the arts, social services, education, health, economic development, entrepreneurship, policy, STEM, and other fields. This year's Expo is a two-part event focusing on organizations leading the way for women's empowerment in education and promoting healthy communities. So today's event is focusing on healthy communities, and last week we focused on education. We have some ground rules. We ask that we are all respectful of one another's views. And also we want you to know that we are recording today's opening session and parts of other sessions, which will be later posted on YouTube channel. We will begin the Expo with keynote remarks from Dr. Bridget Malawezi. Then you will have the opportunity to learn from 11 organizations who work on behalf of women and girls around the world. Please feel free to come and go to different sessions. Each organization will have the opportunity to discuss its work during the sessions and answer your questions. And after this 3 20-minute sessions, there will be a networking session followed by closing remarks and announcements. Before I introduce Dr. Malawezi, we'll share a quick poll with 3 questions to learn more about who is here today. So you should be able to see the poll questions now on your screen. Okay, I see people start responding. Okay, I see some folks that are here because they attended 2021 Virtual Expo. Welcome back. And then we have some people who attend our event for the first time, so welcome. and some people join us from Canada, Mexico, United States. Then we have some from Asia. And thank you so much, everybody, for answering the poll. Now, it's my pleasure to welcome Dr. Bridget Malawesi, who is our keynote speaker. Dr. Bridget Saloba Malawesi is medical doctor, public health practitioner, motivational speaker, activist, and health columnist, graduate of College of the Medicine, University of Malawi, the Emory University, Atlanta, USA, where she did Masters in Public Health with a focus on global health. She's currently a visiting scientist at Harvard, lead fellow in the Department of Global Health and Population at Harvard Chan School of Public Health at Harvard Global Health Institute. She is also vice president of the Malawi chapter of Women in Global Health, as well as acting chair of the task force for the establishment of the Women Doctors Association of Malawi. She is one of the founding members and former executive member chairperson of public relations and COVID public awareness for the Society of Medical Doctors Malawi. Dr. Malawesi, thank you so much for joining us. The floor is yours. Let me make sure we can hear you. I think you're on mute.
Okay. Yes.
Now we can hear you.
Can you hear me now?
Yes, welcome.
Perfect.
Thank you so much
Apologies
for
about
joining
that.
us.
Thank you so much for having me, and it's such a pleasure to join all of you. I'm just so excited to be part of this amazing event, and I really appreciate the opportunity to not only share a bit of insights I have to share, but also learn from so many of the organizations. I was able to see some of the profiles, and it's really amazing work, and I look forward to learning more about the things that you're all doing. So I'll just share my screen. I have my presentation. I've titled it, hopefully that's working. Okay.
Yes, it's working. We can see your screen.
Perfect, great. So I've titled it Moving from Them versus Us to We, and obviously a little bit of a play on words on GlobalWE, which we're really excited to be working with you today. So I'm speaking to you from Malawi, Lilongwe, Malawi. Lilongwe is the capital city of Malawi, and I know some of the organizations work in Malawi, but Malawi is a sub-Saharan country close to Zambia, Mozambique, and Tanzania. It's a small country. Our population is about 19.3 million people, so not many people, but relatively small. And we're majority rural population, so 84% rural, and actually slightly predominantly female. Our latest statistics show that our population is about 51.5% female. So the picture I'm showing right now is pretty much a symbol of what you would find in Malawi, mainly rural women, and lots of smiles. We're actually known as the warm heart of Africa. So hopefully you will be able to meet with us or come visit us sometime. We also have the Lake of Stars, so a great tourist spot. Apologies, well, not apologies, but my son is next to me screaming mommy. So again, lots of welcoming sounds from ourselves. And as I've shared, the image here is really something that most of us would think of when we think of Malawi, and it is a very common thing. As I said, we're mainly a rural population. However, I always love to share about the diversity of Malawi in that apart from the rural populations and the great smiles that we also share, we also have quite remarkable, phenomenal women that we have shown. I only show 3 today as an example of women's leadership and work in Malawi. In the middle there is Dr. Joyce Banda, who was the second female to be a president in Africa, and obviously Malawi's first female president. She ruled for 2 years, from 2012 to 2014, and obviously a remarkable feat. And I think so far we've only had 3 female presidents. Only one is currently in place in African region. And then currently you also have some powerful women. On the left there is Catherine Kotani Hara. She's the current speaker of the parliament, so sort of somebody who would be similar to someone as the leader of the Congress or Senate, for those from the North American sort of understanding. So that's also a very powerful woman that we have in our country. And as well as on the other side is our current Minister of Health, Kumbize Chiponda. So we have a female Minister of Health, and actually our country is really working towards meeting the 50%, 50-50 targets. So although we haven't met them in the parliament, but certainly there is a guidance in terms of all public appointments, whether it's in the board or for ministers, to try and meet that. And I think currently that's what our current administration is trying to meet. So there is some positives and different diversity that we see in women's leadership. And I do work, and I think as Anna was introducing me, mentioned that I work with women in global health, as well as Women Doctors Association. And my passion and sort of in terms of women's leadership and empowerment is really focused on the role of women in health, not only as beneficiaries, but also as providers of healthcare. So that's what the work that we're doing in two of these organizations is about, is really bringing about the change in women's roles. And as part of the Malawi chapter of Women in Global Health, we are in the process of developing our strategy. And I'm not sure if many of you have heard, but there is the statistic globally that, for example, that in health, 75% of the health workforce is women. However, the leadership positions are only held by 25% of the leadership positions are held by women. So there's that gap that we're trying to work towards addressing in terms of ensuring that, you know, again, that women, when we're doing the work, we're hopefully also taking on those higher levels of leadership in healthcare and other sectors as well. I know that we work, many of the organizations that we'll share today work in different areas. And so hopefully that's really what we're trying to drive at for a lot of the work that we're doing. And that's what recently we were doing as Women in Global Health, in terms of exploring what does women's leadership look like in a setting like Malawi. So in Malawi, as I said, you know, we have women in diversity, and we started to explore and did a landscape analysis and context analysis about what that looks like in a global health setting, for example. So we recently had a meeting, like last month actually, where we started discussing what does that look like and how do we change that narrative of women not only taking on leadership positions, that they are providing healthcare, but should also take on more leadership roles. And I want to share two stories that came out in the conversations that we were having in that strategy development meeting, because they really had an impact on me and in the way I think about health, but also in terms of women's leadership. I'm a real advocate, a strong advocate for women's role and leadership. And so, you know, obviously I'm often pushing and driving and talking about these issues. As I mentioned, I'm an activist as well. But during this meeting that we had this past month, one of our colleagues shared two stories of two women. And, you know, I use this illustration here because I think it would help us understand some of the context in which women are working in and the sort of situations that women are working in. So my colleague in this meeting shared about two women in a local NGO doing wonderful work, stellar work, well qualified, and actually doing amazing work in middle management. Both of them highly skilled and doing great work in the roles that they were playing. And for example, let's take Lady A, we'll call her Chikondi, in the gray suit. She was offered a role, a vacancy came up, a leadership role, and she refused to take on that role. And it was a surprise because she was perfect for it. She'd worked for the organization for many years, and it seemed like the next step in terms of her career trajectory. And when she refused, she was probed, obviously, in trying to inquire why she wasn't applying for the role or why she wasn't taking on the role. And her response was that, given the responsibilities of that role and her responsibilities at home as a mother and a wife, as well as a sister, and all the other responsibilities that she had in her work life, in her home life, that she wasn't able to take on this role. And she eventually, even with lots of discussion from top leadership and HR, refused to take on the role, and eventually a male colleague took on that role. That's the story of Chikondi, and we stopped there and thought about it and said, okay, that's very interesting. And in contrast, there was another colleague, not in the same organization, but equally skilled, and let's call her Chisomo. And Chisomo was also perfect for the role, for a vacancy that came up in top leadership. And luckily, in this situation, Chisomo did take on the role. She decided to take on the role and was able to do exceedingly well. She was very brilliant in her role as the top leader in her organization. However, only a year after taking on that leadership role, she was embroiled in a bitter, public, and quite salacious divorce battle that, because of the public entity of what her role was seen in sort of the media and other aspects. And as the sort of details of this divorce came through, one of the areas that came out quite clearly was the conversation around what brought out this divorce. And in his remarks, her former husband at the time mentioned that, things had been relatively okay when she was in middle management, but when she took on the role of a leader, she was no longer available to do her duties and her roles as a wife and mother, especially in their relationship. I think that specifically he cited that as his wife, she was not able to come and cook and clean and wash his underwear for him. Now, I'm not sure how you felt and reacted to those two stories. And so these were the stories we heard in this meeting. And I think for a lot of us, especially sitting in that meeting, we felt a lot of emotions. And I'm sure many of you probably are also feeling a lot of emotions, whether it's directed at Chikondi and Chikondi's husband for this weird thing that he said, or whether it's towards Chisomo and refusing to take on a role that she was perfectly capable of. And these are the realities of what women are facing. And I'm sure it's not only in a Malawian setting. And in that meeting, I really appreciated the facilitator that facilitated this meeting, because he made us stop and say, you know what, we're talking about the individuals, whether it's the husband or the wife or whoever, but why is this happening? What is happening to these women? Why are these women in these two situations? Because it's sort of like two ends of a coin. And although it's not happening to every woman, but it's certainly happening to quite a number of women. And these are the realities. So let us probe and stop and ask why. And I think I really appreciated that conversation, because when we stopped and asked why, we started to understand the context in which women are working, that as we promote women leadership, we also have to understand that they come from context and cultures and communities that have specific, unfortunately gendered and often sometimes unreasonable expectations. And we shared how, even for myself, as when I was getting married, that one of the instructions was that you may be the boss in your office, but you will be a wife at home. And, I think a lot of women are working these double roles of trying to be exceedingly excellent in the office or wherever they're working, and trying to also manage these homes. And it's crumbling, and it's a sad reality. And I think we started to think about, how do we change that? How do we explore and look at the communities that the women are working in? That although, yes, we are focused on empowering women, we must think about the communities in which they exist, because some of these communities, there's a lot more. There's a lot more to just bringing up a woman, educating her, or giving her the job, or giving her the skills. The community needs to be encompassing and healthy. So I love the topic of today in terms of talking about healthy communities, because we need to stop not only thinking about healthy communities in terms of disease prevention or the absence of disease, but really thinking about, what does a healthy community look like to really bolster and promote women's empowerment and participation. I share that because it's really important to think of it this way, because sometimes we're often entering in various contexts, whether you're coming to Malawi or other countries, and it often feels like a them versus us, in terms of hearing many of these stories that we sometimes hear about women and their work and what they're facing. And suddenly you feel like, oh my gosh, what are they doing? Who are they? And we think, and to be honest, I'm a Malawian woman, and these stories were Malawian stories, and it still felt very frustrating. But I think that when we are in these contexts, or wherever we're working towards women's empowerment, we must realize that, yes, we might get angry, frustrated, upset about the realities, and there are some realities that are not okay and they need to be changed. But we also have to start exploring about, how are we intervening? Where do we intervene? And is it just at the individual level or as a community? And when we intervene, who is the intervention? Who is doing the intervention? So really moving from them versus us, us, the ones who know versus those who don't know, to really focusing on we as a collective, the people together doing things together. And I really think about women's empowerment as really, when we explore whichever context we work in, to seek first to understand what is going on, so that when we're trying to probe or intervene, we not only come with our thoughts, but really try to understand what is happening in the world, and not only the obvious things that are there, that women are not leaders, but then trying to dig deeper. Why are they not leaders? What is happening? What is driving? What is underneath? The why might be even more important than some of the things that we see as symptoms, whereas some of these underlying root causes that are really behind the reasons that we are seeing. And I also think it's important to not just support individuals. As I said, this is important conversation, and I love the topic of healthy communities, because especially in contexts like Africa, you're never an individual in your entity. You're always part of a community, and therefore, when we try to empower women, for example, we need to think about how are we also empowering the community? How is the community shifting and changing? And how is the culture changing? Because culture can change. So how is our culture changing in terms of making sure that it's more accepting of women being able to take on these roles and do the things that they do? And also that most of the times we will learn and grow, and must continue to learn and grow. Sometimes you'll do your landscape analysis, you learn some things and you think you've got the answer, but you must continue to learn and grow, because nothing is ever solid. I share the picture on the side. I'm not sure if you can recognize, it's actually me. It's the same background as today. And the picture there is actually taken this week. I was part of a Harvard class, and my son started crying, and I had to stop, as he did start shouting today as well, and had to stop and say, I need to step out and take care of my son. So you can't see my son, you can see like the little top of his head at the back, but I had to step out of class. I put him on my back, and I was in class. And so I think these are the kind of realities we're talking about, that we need to encompass women in the realities of who they are. Bridget is not always going to be in a suit. Sometimes she'll attend your meeting with a baby on her back, but she'll still be able to contribute. And I think these are the kind of ways in which we are more accommodating, more able to really bring women in their diversity, wherever they're coming from. Lastly, as I mentioned, that we're hopefully moving from them versus us, that them are the ones who are doing wrong and us are the ones that are doing right, that eventually we come to a collective. And I want this collective not only to be a sort of competitive advantage, but also in terms of thinking around, where are the women, when we're thinking about the organizations we're working with or we're working in, where are the women that we say we represent, the women that we're empowering? Are they part of the narrative? Are they part of the decision making? One of the statistics that has recently been shared, that has made me think of as well, is around a recent study that looked at the Global Health 50/50 report, that looked at boards of various organizations that are working in global health. And they obviously are often working to target women, to empower women, or do other various aspects about women, and often in settings like Malawi or other countries in low and middle income countries. And yet, when they explored the various roles, 2,000 roles of board members, only 1% of the board members were from women like myself, from low and middle income countries. And that begs the question, are we really working together? Is it we, or is it still them versus us, or them for us, or you versus me? And so really, when we think about women's empowerment and we must also think about making sure that the women that we say we are representing and empowering and emboldening are part of the conversation, not as a token, but really embedded in the decision making, that they are part of that. And I want to share with you and leave with you with three words in my traditional language, Chichewa. I'm from Malawi. These are words from my husband, so I've plagiarized a little bit. He's a poet and a spoken word artist, but he often has talked about unity, and these three words, umodzi, limodzi, pamodzi. And I thought these are vibrant and perfect for talking about we. When we're talking about we must think about, and the beauty of the African language is that the three words sound very similar, but they talk about different things. They talk about unity, umodzi, standing as one. They talk about limodzi, as they'll talk about one. So we're talking as one. It's not them versus one, but we are all one together, and the togetherness is pamodzi. So when we're saying that we, GlobalWE is doing all this work and we are working together for women's empowerment, that we are also thinking about it in all those three dimensions of what we stands for, that we are unified, that we're talking as one, and that we're together in every message and all the work that we are doing. Thank you so much for having me and hosting me, Ziko Mukwambiri, and I hope to engage with many of you and hopefully see many of you in Malawi and in the future. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Dr. Malawezi, for these wonderful remarks and for your amazing work on behalf of women and girls. I think Umodzi, Limodzi, Pamodzi is our motto for today. And thank you also for sharing the stories about the two women, your personal story, and make us think about how to intervene as a community. I think it's going to be a common theme in our what happens next. So now